Everything changed last Friday. Laura, the woman I'd spent the last 2.5 years building a life with, told me she wanted an open relationship. I'm Michael in my early 40s, and I thought our relationship was solid. I was even planning to ask her to move in with me soon. But for the past few weeks, Laura had been acting distant. I chalked it up to stress or a rough patch, thinking we'd get through it. What I didn't expect was for her to sit me down and suggest something that would tear everything apart. She gave me this long, carefully prepared speech about why opening the relationship would be good for both of us. When she finished, I asked her one question. Do you already have someone in mind? Because let's be honest, no. One just wakes up and decides to open a relationship without a reason. She hesitated for a moment before admitting it. Yes, there was someone. At that moment, it was clear to me. Either she'd already done something with this guy, or she had plans in place. I stood up and walked around the apartment while she kept talking, trying to convince me this would be a positive thing for us. She said it could make our relationship stronger. By the time she finished, I had already made my decision. I handed her one of my sports bags, which I'd packed with her things, and told her to leave the spare key on the table. We were done, and she knew exactly why. Then I sat down on the couch, turned on the TV, and forced myself to act like I didn't care. Laura just stood there, speechless. Her eyes were glassy, like she was about to cry. Before she could say a word, I told her I didn't want to talk about it. She needed to leave. As soon as she walked out the door, I fell apart. I felt unworthy, like I wasn't enough for her. I cried a little, sitting there alone in the silence, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. Right now, I'm still mourning. My phone hasn't stopped buzzing since it happened. Friends from both sides keep calling and texting me, saying I overreacted to what they think was just a simple request. I don't know what Laura has told them, but I can't stop asking myself, did I go too far? Did I handle this the wrong way? After everything happened, I knew Laura and I had to talk one last time. I needed to hear the full truth from her. So we met at our usual coffee spot, the place we used to go every week. From a distance, Laura looked stunning, so stunning that for a moment, I wanted to forget everything and take her back. It took all my strength to keep those feelings in check. When I got closer, I noticed how sad she looked. Her eyes were red, and it was obvious she'd been crying. We sat down, and before she could say anything, I asked her to tell me everything. I needed her to be completely honest, no holding back. After she told me her side of the story, I planned to ask her some direct questions. Her story was pretty straightforward. About 2 months before she brought up the open relationship, she and her friends went out for a girls' night of dancing. That's where they met this guy. Handsome, confident, and, as she described, exotic. For the first month, he was just the group's new fascination. All her single friends were interested in him, and they would talk about him, sharing their experiences and stories. But eventually, the guy started paying special attention to Laura. He flirted with her, asked her to dance, and she went along with it. We had an agreement about these nights out. She was supposed to avoid guys who tried to make a move. I had always been clear about how I felt. Let's face it, most guys don't approach women just to dance, and this situation was no different. But Laura admitted she enjoyed the attention. She liked the way it felt and let herself have fun. Looking at the timeline, this was around the same time I noticed her becoming distant. As time went on, Laura's friends started sharing more personal stories about their encounters with the guy. Those stories planted seeds in her mind, and she began fantasizing about him. She told me that he had been flirting with her, trying to get closer, but she swore she didn't do anything because she was with me. But her thoughts kept spiraling. Her friends encouraged the idea of exploring something new, and with a little alcohol and bad advice, the idea of an open relationship came up. Laura and her friends spent over 2 weeks brainstorming how to convince me. They assumed I'd be open to it because years ago, back in my early 20s, I had been involved in swinging and some other adventurous experiences. But what they didn't understand is that those things were done as part of a committed couple, out of excitement and trust, not because I wanted to invite someone else into the relationship. Finally, Laura worked up the nerve to ask me. She told me she never expected me to end the relationship over it. She and her friends thought the worst case scenario would be me getting upset or saying no. They didn't think it was a big deal to ask. At this point, I stopped her. I told her she should have known better. We had been together for over 2 years, and I had always shared my thoughts with her openly. About a year ago, when some mutual friends of ours went through a similar situation, it became a big topic in our group. I had said more than once that if someone in a committed relationship wanted to see other people, they should break up first. That's how I've always felt. I explained to her that the breakup wasn't just about her asking the question. It was about the fact that there was already someone else in the picture. For me, that was a serious betrayal of trust. If this idea of an open relationship had come up naturally, maybe we could have worked through it. But the way she went about it, hiding things, planning it with her friends, it was a huge red flag. We talked in circles for a while, and then I asked her some direct questions. I asked if she had been intimate with him, and she said no. I asked if she had feelings for him, and she said no. Finally, I asked if she had seen him again since that night, and she said no. Her answers gave me a small sense of relief, but it wasn't enough. I told her I couldn't go back to her. For my own mental and emotional health, I needed to move on. I told her that since we share a lot of friends, I didn't want this breakup to cause drama or force anyone to choose sides. We should behave like adults and keep things friendly. She apologized, saying how sorry she was and how she wished she could undo everything. But we both knew it was too late. As she started crying, I felt my own emotions bubbling up. And before we both broke down, I asked for the check and ended the conversation. I walked her to her car and opened the door for her. That's when she broke down completely. I couldn't help but hug her, and we stood there for about 10 minutes, holding each other while she cried. When she finally calmed down, she got into her car and drove away. I was in shock. I didn't know how to feel. So I went home, grabbed my camping gear, and headed to the mountains for the weekend. I needed to clear my head. Early Monday morning, as I was driving back to the city, my phone finally picked up a signal, and the flood of messages began. Friends and family had been blowing up my phone, worried because I had disappeared without telling anyone. I texted everyone back to let them know I was fine and on my way to work. Laura had sent me a text too. She said she felt like this wasn't over yet, and that she thought I just needed time to process everything. She said she would wait for me and hope for another chance. I haven't replied because, deep down, I know it's over. But experience has taught me never to say never, so for now, I'm just focusing on myself and taking it one day at a time.